This is Amateur Logic, episode 89 for April 15th, 2016. This episode of Amateur Logic was brought to you by MFJ, the world leaders in ham radio accessories at mfjenterprises.com, and by Icom. Spring is here. Get out, get mobile with Icom's D-Star radios. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Amateur Logic. I'm George.
I'm Peter.
And I'm Emile.
And Tommy's...
There's something missing here.
Yeah.
What is?
It's Tommy. He couldn't be with us tonight. He had to be out of state this weekend. So we're going to try our best to do this show without a co-pilot tonight. You guys just kind of hang on there, and maybe we'll get through this with no injuries.
What, he's done a runner and gone over the state line, has he?
He has, yeah. Yep. Well, great to be back. Got a big show lined up tonight, nonetheless. Plenty of content here. A lot going on. I've got just a little tip tonight on a particular wire splice that a lot of you probably already know about, but I would assume there's people who don't. Tommy's got a segment coming up. He compares the Raspberry Pi original Model B, the B Plus, I believe, maybe the 2. I'm not sure if he tried the 3 or not. I haven't watched his video, but it's a shootout amongst the different Raspberry Pis on speed and such. And Peter, what have you got tonight?
Well, actually, I've got an exclusive preview of the Raspberry Pi 4, so it's Pi for everybody.
Okay, Emile, what are you going to have tonight?
Well, George and Peter, I have a continuation of the change in direction on my end. I needed a higher speed connection out to the shack, which was just beyond the limits of copper. So I went wireless, and I'll leave it at that. Okay.
I've watched yours, by the way, and yeah, good stuff. It's going to be interesting. You'll want to see that. Well, let's get on into to some of our emails and comments and such here. I've got one that comes from Larry Snyder, HK2LS. I'm not sure where HK is.
I think it's the Korea from memory. Maybe somebody in the chat room knows.
Yeah, I don't remember, but anyway, he says, I really enjoy you talking about electronics, transmitters, and antennas. I think your job is very interesting, and you get to think all the time. Well, yeah, more than I want to, a lot of times. I was wondering, when running ESSB at 4K, he's talking about, I believe they call it enhanced single sideband at 4 kilohertz bandwidth. Does this affect the signal transmitted as far as range? I.e., will the signal transmit as far given the same power, antenna, and time as it'll transmit with 2.7 kilohertz? I understand the frequency would be wider, but I don't know if there's a relationship with increasing bandwidth versus transmit range. I understand if someone's on an adjacent frequency. Well, Larry, I'm going to try to oh, by the way, he's in Colombia. Okay. Cool. Greg over in the chat room is saying no, that it won't affect it. I'm going to say, yeah, it'd be very little. I mean, I don't think you would hear much effect there as far as how far your signal will go. If there was a big difference in bandwidth, you might hear some effect there, but generally the difference between 2.7 kilohertz and 4 kilohertz, I don't think you would notice any difference in your transmit range. Now, you'll sound a little better with 4 kilohertz than you will with 2.7 audio, but you're also going to be occupying more bandwidth. And if there's anybody right next door to you, yeah, they're not really going to appreciate that much. I like a good sounding station, and he's talking about on HF here, and he's talking about single sideband. So yeah, I kind of like a good sounding single sideband station, but you've got to, you know, kind of balance it with how much bandwidth are you taking away from someone else, and are you interfering with someone else? I don't particularly like the ones that are real thin, 2.4 kilohertz and all. I mean, that's more like communications audio. You add just a little bit to it and don't get carried away. You add a little crispness to the audio, a little, depending on the radio, maybe a little rounder bottom end. But Bob Heil uses the term articulation. You know, it kind of helps out with that, being able to distinguish different letters from each other. But anyway, Larry, there's my answer, and I'm sticking to it. Emile, I believe you've got, what have you got here, a Google Plus comment for us tonight?
I do. A while back, I believe you had posted a article from Electronic Products where DARPA is willing to pay the public to weaponize their household appliances. And like I said, I'm not too sure about the whole validity of that article in general, but I should go ahead and submit my local oven/cooktop as is.
Okay, actually, that Electronic Products is that's a well-respected website. So yeah, I'm thinking there must be something to it. They're wanting to see if terrorists can take their household appliances. And
I'm more worried about my wife than the terrorists, because if she's watching this, some of those things might be considered as IEDs, and I'm in trouble in general.
It reminds me of when I used to, as you recall, I did a segment where I discussed my aerial setup for my IC51, and the antenna setup was not connecting properly at one stage, and it was causing a lot of stray RF. Every time I went to transmit, I would get an electric shock off the one of the buttons on the radio, so it was sort of weaponized.
Yeah. So if you could just get the enemy to sit there and transmit, you might be on to something. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Tommy couldn't be with us tonight, but he did get this video put together, and it's on the Raspberry Pi, the various models, and how they compare to each other. So let's take a look at that.
For those of you that follow on social media, you noticed I got a Raspberry Pi 3 recently, and I mentioned I wanted to benchmark it. Well, I also got a Raspberry Pi 2 not too long before that, and I got a Pi 0 in between those two, and I've got a drawer full of, essentially a drawer full of Raspberry Pi Model Bs. I've probably got about 5 or 6 of these. But anyway, with all the different varieties that you can get or have, it's kind of hard to decide which one to use for what task. Obviously, the newer ones are up to more heavy-duty computing tasks. I want to run them through their paces and see how they come out, just out of curiosity, and see what kind of improvements have happened on the performance over the evolution of them. Now, there are a few models that I don't have. I don't have a B+, and I don't have the Model A's. But anyway, we'll go with what I've got here. For my benchmark, I'm going to calculate pi. What's more poetic than to calculate pi on a bunch of Raspberry Pis? So I'm going to calculate it out to 5,000 digits to the right of the decimal, so they'll run long enough to generate a little heat. Through the process of doing the calculations, I've got an infrared thermometer here, and I'm going to kind of check the temperature of the little CPU and see what the difference in the temperatures are, just for curiosity's sake. Now, none of these have been overclocked. I'm not really a big believer in overclocking. I'm more of a fan of stability than a few minor little improvements in speed. Let's start with our Model B Raspberry Pi. This is not the original one. The original one had 256 megs of RAM. This is the 512 mega RAM version. Let's go ahead and hook up my Wi-Fi dongle here. And we're going to use this little micro SD card for all 4 Pis. I took a little time and I set this card up, and it works for all 4 of these Raspberry Pis. It connects to the Wi-Fi on all 4 of them using the dongle I just showed you, and for the 3 it uses the built-in Wi-Fi that came on that board. For this one, we'll put it in this little SD card adapter that'll go from micro SD to SD. I have an HDMI cable here that I'm going to hook up just so I can see the output on the TV over there to make sure there's no problems. And let's go ahead and boot it up. To do my test, we're going to use the little BC application that's came with the distro on the Raspberry Pi. It stands for Basic Calculator or Basic Calculations, and I actually searched on the internet for a program to calculate pi, and I found this little one line that implements that utility to do it. So I'm a big fan of copy and paste, so we're going to take the easy route out today. So we'll SSH into the Raspberry Pi. I went ahead and set that up beforehand so I can get into it. We'll bring up the terminal and let's go ahead and SSH in. Now this is the SSH command. -L means to log in with Pi as a username, and the name of my Pi is Jarvis. And yeah, I must have been watching the Iron Man or something when I set up this card. So, but that's been the name of it for quite some time. So.
At your service, sir. Engage heads-up display.
Okay, we're in. So let's scroll down through here, and I actually have the command already there. That's the command I want to use. It's time is going to actually measure the time when the application starts and display the time that's elapsed for pretty much any application that you run on Linux. So that's it. Our command for the BC application is scale equals 5,000, which is the places to pass the decimal, and this is the calculation to calculate pi, and it's going to pipe it into the BC application. And L means use standard libraries. So anyway, let's go ahead and kick it off. And when I do that, I'm going to take my thermometer and I'm going to keep a check on the temperature of the CPU. Now at the bottom of my thermometer here, it'll show the max temp. So if I move the infrared sensor around the CPU, it'll pick up the maximum and hold it during that session. So, okay, let's get it started. And it's off. And I'll start checking the temperature. (113.1). If I touch the CPU on it, it feels warm, but it's not hot. And it finished. It looks like it was 3 minutes, 37 seconds. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. And it's off, so let's go ahead and kill the power. Notice we did a clean shutdown. And let's replace that. Let's disconnect the Wi-Fi, and let's remove the micro SD card out of the adapter and set this B aside because we should be finished with it for the time being. Let's try this little Model 0. In my mind, this one has the most potential. It has one downfall though. It doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi. And the only reason that it's a problem to me is because to hook anything up to it, you've got to use a micro USB to standard USB adapter, and then if you're going to hook up more than one thing, you need to hook up a hub to it. So if I need Wi-Fi and a keyboard, then I've got to have this. But for this instance, we're just going to use the Wi-Fi dongle that I had earlier. So we'll plug it into the adapter, and then we'll plug this in to the one that says USB right here. You have to be careful. One's marked USB, one's marked power. And we're going to need our memory card, same one we used in the last demonstration. So let's plug that up, set all this together, and let's put a little power on it. And let's see, we got a light. It flashed. There we go. We'll give it time to boot up. Okay, let's SSH in. Same command since it's the same card. Same password. Works fine. We'll go ahead and jump right into the benchmark. Same exact command we used previously. We'll give it a few minutes to run and then we'll hit it with the thermometer here. 106.1. Give it some more time. 109.4. It's steady climbing. Now if I ran something that took an hour, I'm not sure what the temperature would get up to, but I'm assuming it would be a lot greater. 112.7. And the time it took was, wow, 2 minutes and 33 seconds? I didn't expect that. Okay, so let's go ahead and shut this one down as well. Give it a minute to do a clean exit, and then now let's remove the power. We're going to need this card. Now let's go with the Model 2. So I've already got an EDI Max card in here, so I'll just leave it. This is the one I kind of leave running most of the time to tinker around with. And let's plug the card in. Let's go ahead and apply the power and give it time to boot up. I expect this one to complete a lot faster than the previous ones. Let's SSH back in, and again this one's called Jarvis as well because it's the same card. And let's go ahead and kick off our calculation. Okay, I got 102.6 and I got 2 minutes and 8 seconds. Let's shut this down and let's look at the new kit on the block, the Pi 3. Next one is going to be fun because I'm not going to plug anything up. This board's got built-in Wi-Fi and I already have it configured. The only thing we need to do is get the memory card out of this one. Let's SSH in. So far we're up to 109.7 and that was it. Wow, look at that. It's nearly half of the time. Okay, so that didn't take very long. Let's go ahead and run our other benchmark. Now I want to test my desktop application and compare it with my fastest Raspberry Pi. I read people saying, wow, this is truly a desktop replacement computer, and for browsing it sure can be, but for everyday use, for everything, I don't think you're going to want to settle for that. But let's just check it out and see how it compares to my iMac. Okay, that finished pretty quick. I got a 28,339 score on Octane 2. So let's go ahead and start up Octane on the Raspberry Pi 3. One quick word about my benchmark here. I realize that it's flawed. This is not the ultimate test of the processor power of a computer, or the computer itself rather, not just processor. There's a GPU that's to be considered, there's memory access speed, there's disk access, which in this case would be memory card. There's the speed rating of the card itself. There's just so many different factors, and I realize this is just one. I just wanted to get an idea using the common calculation, just a step and see how it looks. Well, that was definitely interesting. As you can see by the numbers, there's quite a bit of difference there between the different Pis just for calculating Pi. And as far as using a Pi 3 for a desktop alternative, if your expectations are pretty low, you might get by with it, but I just don't think that would cut it for my own use. Anyway, it was fun and satisfied the curiosities that I had between the different Raspberry Pis I own. And anyway, maybe you guys found it interesting too. 73. We'll see you next time.
Well, interesting segment there from Tommy. I would not have thought the Pi Zero was going to beat the original Pi, but you know.
There you go. One question I had though, George, was whether in the Pi 2 and the Pi 3 tests, whether full advantage was being taken of the quad-core architecture, or whether it was just using one of the cores. So, you know, was there multi-threading going on? If not, you know, if it was set up to multi-thread, would it actually run 4 times faster?
Well, save that question about 30 days, and we'll ask Tommy when he's back.
I'm sure he could program it in if he wanted to anyway. So, yeah, but yeah, an interesting comparison. But it just shows the evolution of the Raspberry Pi over time, that it's becoming, although it was never intended to be, more and more like a desktop computer.
Yeah, not quite there yet, though. What do you think, Emile?
I'm thinking that Moore's law is catching up to the pi.
Oh yeah.
Or is that the other way around?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They're catching up with
as
each other.
they shove more transistors in there, and more power and more technology of the buses, and just like Peter said, core processors. That's going to be probably more than a desktop.
Yeah.
So this could be Emile's law, namely that the speed of the pi will double every couple of years.
Emile's law. I like that, Peter.
Yeah.
Yep. Could work.
Well, I don't have a Pi 0 yet. I haven't ordered one or a Pi 3. I've got a number of the Model Bs. I skipped the B+. I got a couple of the Model 2s, and I'm not really doing anything with any of them right now. I just haven't ordered a 3. As your shack grows with additional radios and antennas, it becomes impractical to swap antenna cables around for different operating combinations. That's when antenna switches become an important addition, and no one offers you more choices in antenna and transmitter switches than MFJ Enterprises. The MFJ 1702C is a two-position cavity-type coax switch that handles up to 2.5 kW PEP, and it's usable through 450 MHz. The MFJ Rhino switches feature gold-plated flanges and connector contacts for low VSWR and insertion loss. Rock-solid die-cast construction makes it tough inside and out. The MFJ 2702 is a two-port switch with either SO239 or Type-N connectors to cover from DC to 1 or 3 GHz at up to 2 kilowatts on HF, 1 kilowatt on VHF, 500 watts on UHF, and 250 watts above. The MFJ 2703 offers the same performance in a three-way design, and the MFJ 274 is the four-port model. The MFJ 1701 is a 6-position 50 to 75 ohm HF antenna switch rated at 2 kW PEP. Easily connect one radio to 6 antennas or 6 radios to one antenna. The MFJ 1703 is an inexpensive HF antenna transceiver crossover switch that gives you a simple way to share 2 antennas with 2 radios. The MFJ 1700C is a deluxe high-power HF antenna transceiver switch with 2 ceramic rotary switches that let you select 1 to 6 antennas to 1 to 6 transceivers in any combination. You can also plug in an antenna tuner, wattmeter, or linear, so it's always connected to the selected antenna and transceiver. No matter what your RF switch needs, no one offers you more solutions than MFJ. See all the great choices today at MFJenterprises.com. Back to the show here. Peter, I believe you have an email that came from a fan who was responding to something you had said.
Yeah, Ed, DD5LP, who's from I hope I got this saying this right. It's Pulgen in Bayern in Germany, southern Germany. Watched the latest edition where there was some discussion about having a European member, and he notes the logistic problems in having people across 3 wildly different time zones. He suggests that he might be able to contribute in his semi-retirement. Look, we welcome any videos that the viewers can actually contribute. You just send them through to George, and he'll assess whether they're appropriate for the show. But yeah, we've had that offer out there for a long period of time. So if people have got an interesting project, or even just a photograph of something interesting that they're doing, either put it on our Google Plus page or our Facebook page, or send it through to us, and we'll have a look at it. Yeah,
we're always looking for videos from some users. That's how Peter joined us on the show, and this other guy over here too, Emile. He just, I don't know, Emile and I kind of knew each other. We had talked before some on the air, but
yep.
Yeah, we were asking for people from Europe or from England, and we got.
Dieudonné is French. I just happen to live in, around a city that was once French, so New Orleans.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Oh, Well, you're you've got a partly French background, George, as well, haven't you?
Yeah, partly. On my grandfather's side, I've got a little bit of French, German, British, and who knows? I mean,
Mutt.
redneck,
Mutt.
mutt. Yeah, that's not the term I was looking for, Emile, but
okay.
yeah, that'll work. Well, I've got an email here. This one, actually, it came to Tommy, but they copied me on it as well. If you were watching right before we started the live stream tonight, we were playing last month's Ham College on there, and we had talked about satellites. And I made the comment that the geostationary satellites are always moving. And he said, yeah, they're always moving to, keep up with the Earth. And I said, no, that's not what I mean. They're always moving in a little circle as they go around the Earth. Have you heard of that, Peter?
Oh, yes, indeed. In fact, I've heard of some Russian satellites that over time they drift slightly away from where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And they start to do little figure eights.
Well, this came from Greg Messenger, VE6WGM. And
Canada, isn't it?
yeah, he said that he had noticed in a recent episode and that Tommy looked like he didn't believe me. So he said George was right. Geostationary satellites do drift, and they have to be given corrections to keep them from drifting too far, quote, out of the box. And that's what you call it. There's an imaginary cube in space outlining the maximum drift distance allowed. And look up the term center of the box, and that'll explain it to you. But he says many times with higher gain, receive only, and most two-way communication dishes are being installed, the field tech will have to wait until the satellite is center of box. Then he can do his final peaking, get it all just right. So yeah, they do drift, and that's what I was referring to, and I just couldn't remember the term. I've got just a short segment here on the correct way to splice wires. Now this is really for solid wire, not for stranded wires, although you could do it with stranded wire. This is the way that NASA requires that wires be spliced. Of course, you'll solder them too. But there's a splice that's been around since the Western Union days called the Lineman splice. And, well, I just threw together a little video here about it. Because a lot of you probably know about it, but I bet there's some that don't. What if you needed to splice two wires together and you needed the splice to be really strong? The tip we're going to look at here works best with solid wire, but could be done with stranded wire. It's called a lineman splice. First thing you do is strip back a generous portion of insulation and get both wires the same length. We'll lay them end to end like this. And we'll start by wrapping the wire on the left over. The wire on the right will go under, or basically like this. And then we continue the left-hand wire going over. Now the way the Western Union technicians would do this is to use needle nose pliers to get these wraps super tight. And you'll notice that I'm not really doing that here. For NASA specifications, you need at least 3 wraps there. We're going to go on out. Approximately 5 wraps. These wires need to be right next to each other. Now if you're planning on soldering this, you'd want to tin these wires before you begin. And now we'll clip back either end of the wire. And here's our Lineman splice. If it's done properly, this splice is at least as strong as the wire itself. As you pull it, just tightens up. Next time you need to tie two wires together, give this a try. You might not want to strip back quite as much insulation though. That's really an amazing splice there. I mean, it actually does pull together. Just looking at it, you would think, oh, the thing's going to unwind. And I think if you did it with stranded wire, it probably would unwind easier, but works pretty good. You know,
It's all in the technique.
all in the technique.
Yeah. And with a little bit of heat shrink around that, you've got a really, really good joint, and you know, one that you can rely on.
Yep, you sure do. Well, Peter, what have you got for us tonight? Set this up for us.
We've sort of looked at the various incarnations of the Raspberry Pi, and there was a recent announcement of the Raspberry Pi 3. Well, let me tell you all about the Raspberry Pi 4. Hello everyone. Today I've got a very, very special treat for you. An exclusive look at the forthcoming Raspberry Pi 4 mini computer. Not the 3, the 4. In fact, AmateurLogic is the very, very first show to be given a preview look at this hardware anywhere in the world, so it's quite a coup for this program. But first, some background information. Last month I provided a suggested fix for the Raspberry Pi's main problem, namely the propensity of the SD card to get corrupted. Well, shortly after the release of the episode, I was contacted by Tim, a Raspberry Pi developer in Cupertino in California, and he offered to send me a sample of the forthcoming Raspberry Pi 4 and a detailed explanation of the history behind many of the changes that have been made. The best news is that the Raspberry Pi Foundation has addressed my concern about corruption of SD cards, and the new hardware is simply amazing. Let's start first with an examination of existing Raspberry Pi hardware and discuss its shortcomings. I'm still awaiting the arrival of a Raspberry Pi 3, so we'll examine my Raspberry Pi 2 and keep in mind that the new Raspberry Pi 3 is similar but with added Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and an upgraded quad-core processor. With each iteration of the Raspberry Pi, the processing power of the Pi has increased. The 2 had a 900 meg quad-core ARM Cortex-A7 processor, and the Raspberry Pi 3 now has a 1200 MHz quad-core ARM Cortex-A53 processor. The Raspberry Pi 4 goes one step further with a 1.85 GHz 64-bit A9 processor. Aside from the problems of corrupted SD cards, the previous Raspberry Pis have also suffered from the propensity for the SD card to be bumped and pop out as it protrudes from the edge of the board. Both problems have been fixed by the inclusion of 4 GB of flash memory, along with some software changes to ensure that the board is shut down properly each time. No more corrupted operating systems. The board also now includes 2 GB of onboard RAM. Another major cause of corrupted SD cards was the external power supply. This has been fixed by the inclusion of a clip-in lithium-ion battery which will facilitate portable operation. The Raspberry Pi 3 saw the inclusion of onboard Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and the Raspberry Pi 4 goes one step further with the addition of a SIM card slot, which will facilitate remote data logging applications, remote operation, and an alternative access path to the internet where Wi-Fi is not available. Now, while some things have been added, a few things have been lost as well. With the addition of Wi-Fi and the SIM card, the Ethernet jack is redundant, so this has been removed. Similarly, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on board, there's no longer any need for USB ports, as wireless mice and keyboards can be used instead, although as you'll see, even these are unnecessary. This has slimmed down the profile of the new board considerably. There's also been a major change in philosophy by the Foundation, in part driven by legal action. Quite a few children who had been given Pis as presents were injuring themselves on the pin headers on the board, which in turn precipitated a class action from angry parents. Also, it's been found that users of the Pi have gravitated less towards building hardware from the Pi and instead focused more on software development. With this in mind, the Foundation took the difficult decision to remove the pins and envelop the board in a plastic case to prevent further injuries. However, there's further good news. The optional camera module has now been included as a standard piece of the board and has been upgraded to a 12 megapixel camera which is mounted on the back of the board. The Foundation also conducted research into where Raspberry Pis were being sold with a view to making them more accessible to people and more particularly children in developing countries. The major finding was that the Pi was not being purchased in many African countries because many people did not have TV sets nor had access to reliable mains power. To resolve this issue, the Foundation has now dispensed with the HDMI connector and the optional capacitive LCD screen is now included as a standard part of the main board. The LCD screen has also been upgraded to a 1334 by 750 pixel resolution. All of these changes have resulted in a much slimmer, more integrated product which will be much more suitable for people in third world countries. In fact, the Foundation is considering introducing a new one Raspberry Pi per child philosophy with a view to selling Raspberry Pis to third world governments for use in their education systems. However, the Raspberry Pi is not immune to competition. There are now banana Pis, orange Pis and other competitors who have diminished the brand value of the Pi name. With this in mind, the Foundation has looked at Arduino and concluded that there would be much value in taking advantage of the Uno name, which is amazingly popular. However, this is trademarked, so the Foundation has decided to instead use the English translation of Uno, named One. The new Raspberry Pi 4 will now be rebranded as the Integrated Peripherals Handset version 1 or IPH1. There has also been a major software upgrade. Previous Raspberry Pis have been capable of running Raspbian and later on Linux and Android. However, as you may have read, there's now a virus circulating for Android which can steal your bank details. Whilst open source is in theory quite good, in practice it leaves hardware vulnerable to hackers. With this in mind, the Foundation sought a new operating system with less vulnerability, but the capacity to take advantage of the new and expanded hardware. Thanks to skillful negotiation, an agreement has been reached under which iOS will now be ported to the Raspberry Pi. Also, as part of the agreement, the Raspberry Pi 4 will now be made available through Apple stores around the world. I've been told that I can only give you a brief look at the new Raspberry Pi 4 as the Foundation's competitors are keen to copy the new Pi. But as you can see, the new Raspberry Pi has all the new features I just mentioned and has been integrated into a smooth, slim package which is portable. The LCD touchscreen removes the need for a keyboard and there's now no danger of injuring yourself on any protruding pins or corrupting your SD card. The final point to note is the recommended retail price. With all the hardware upgrades and also inflation, the prices had to rise slightly from the previous US $35. According to Tim, the cost of the new IPH1 will be just $49.90, which is an incredible deal. Oh, hang on, just one second. I've misread the price, sorry. It's actually $499, but that's still great value. And of course, it's a Raspberry Pi, so it's a must-have piece of hacking hardware. I think it's a winner. Now, I should point out that all that information came from some guy called Tim in Cupertino in California. So I can't vouch for its authenticity, but I can say that I have seen advertisements for the IPH1 in Apple stores. So if you're interested, go to your local Apple store, go up to the counter and ask, look, I'm interested in getting an IPH1, and just see what answer you get.
Yeah, I'm going to hang on to my money a little bit longer, I think, Peter. I noticed your calendar. Your calendar's not on the wall there.
Yeah, I filmed it a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I think it was April 1st, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. I had, I think, I was had a free day that day, and I thought it'd be an appropriate day to film the segment.
No, I was going to totally miss getting stuck by the protruding parts of the pie too.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Look, how many of us have actually, had bloodied hands from working on Raspberry Pi projects? So I think removing those darn pins is a good move.
Party pooper. I don't know what else to say. I want the pins.
$499, whatever.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Anyway, as I said, go to your local Apple store.
Yeah.
Check it out for yourself.
Okay. Well, we'll be back in a moment after this message from Icom. Spring is here. Get out, get mobile with Icom's D-Star radios. Extend your coverage, display, and capabilities without sacrificing size with Icom's ID51A Plus, now in 5 colors. RSMS1A free download Android application allows personal device connection where you can view locations of repeater sites, send and receive text messages, or send and receive pictures. It's got DV and FM repeater search functions, D-Star DV mode capability, and micro SD card slot. If you're new to D-Star, try Icom's ID880H. Features include VHF, UHF dual-band functionality, one band at a time, good menu structure, and easy programming, fast multiple scanning for maximum reception. For the ultimate D-Star mobile experience, hit the road with Icom's ID5100A. This radio offers hands-free operation, optional Bluetooth capability, large backlit screen for high-contrast viewing, and 50 watts of output power on both VHF and UHF. Visit IcomAmerica.com for more information on Icom's D-Star radios. Peter, I think after that you need to redeem yourself in some way.
I have a Google comment I could redeem myself with.
Okay,
Like
yeah, let's try that.
Okay, well, I've got a Google comment here from Ray WD5DHK, and apologies for not looking up where Ray is actually located, but I presume it's WD is in the US. Several episodes ago, Peter talked about JT65. I tried it and loved the mode. I used 3 watts to an indoor antenna, and by the way, note that term, what he says there, an indoor antenna, and have a lot of fun with the mode. Thanks, Peter, Ray WD5DHK. Yep, it is a really great mode, and what I really like about it is the low power usage, and it's just ideally suited for people that, maybe because of aerial restrictions or council restrictions, can't put up a big external antenna, but they can still communicate quite considerable distances using the mode. And it's pretty reliable. I've got to say, it's a very impressive mode to use. From memory, wasn't it K1JT who developed the mode? Trying to remember his name just off the top of my head. Maybe
Joe
the chat
Taylor.
will remember.
Joe Taylor.
But Joe Taylor, yeah.
Yep.
And both it and WSPR have been great modes, and people have been having heaps of fun. So yeah, thanks for the comment, Ray. And yeah, I do recommend people checking out JT65. And if you go back through the old episodes of AmateurLogic, you'll see that we've done 1 or 2 episode or segments on that subject.
Yeah. Emile, I believe you've got a Google Plus comment too on something interesting.
Yeah, it is a Google Plus comment from our buddy Mike, VE3MIC, for the people who want to see that display on an external monitor on a PC. the software that you use for remote controlling the rigs from Icom. It's called RS-BA1. That is really, for controlling it, remote operations. Anyway, that software will allow you to display that screen, which I saw your review with Ray and Tommy the other day, and I really like the menu structure. I'm thinking they're kind of merging the classic-looking rig with the newer model. So there's a method to basically display those screens remotely now through that software.
Yeah, and several of the Icom rigs will do that with the new software. As a matter of fact, my 7700 will do it. I have not upgraded my version of the software yet so that I can take advantage of that, but I need to, because that's a really nice feature. Go out remotely, and there you've got your pound adapter and everything on your laptop. Very, very cool idea there. By the way, I've heard from a few people who have bought the IC7300s now, and I asked them what do they think about them, and everybody so far is crazy about it.
Yeah, K2BAG, John in the chat room, said he loves his.
Yep. Really nice, super looking rig. Well, Emile, you've got, a segment that I really enjoyed watching in advance. I cheated, I watched it before the show, but I really like this. You want to set it up for us?
Absolutely. Like I said, when the shack, I tried several iterations of connectivity out to the shack through Ethernet through the power lines, just experimenting Ethernet, direct, and there was a couple of projects that I wanted to try. One providing Ethernet to another location within the neighborhood here, and also to the shack out in the back, which is just outside of the reach of normal copper connectivity. So I went ahead and picked up some of the Ubiquiti devices that you'll see how I accomplished that within this video.
Cool. Let's take a look.
Hello, George, Peter, and Tommy. I said we were going to go a little bit different direction this time, and holding true to that with this segment. So we're going to look at point-to-point bridge using a special network device to get that signal where you need it to be in a pretty reliable and high capacity throughput at some distance. For my particular test with this technology, and with the cost of fiber being as high as it is, and my interest in wireless in general, I'm going to be using the Ubiquiti line of point-to-point bridging and wireless connectivity to achieve what I'm trying to do with my shack. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to start with a simple short-range point-to-point link here between my shack and the other device you just saw inside. One of the cool things they did to overcome the coax losses, of course this is running at 5 gigahertz, so you can imagine what the losses would be, is to include the entire radio and logic, everything into it over Ethernet, especially with the advent of power over Ethernet connections here. So the centerpiece here in this dish is the entire radio, logic, web server, everything you need to connect to the other end. In this device's case, it uses a power injector to send the power over the Ethernet cables, which can then be used to feed your computer direct as a station, or another switch or router device to distribute that bridge to another network. I am quite surprised at the user interface, the web interface in particular for this device. It's very well put together and has a lot of information that's actually useful, especially when trying to align or get the dishes to work at their peak or maximum. You can see the active constellation diagrams for all the QAM sources or conversations happening, which is pretty extensive right now. There is an effective throughput here of about 655 megabits per second with this link. I actually get around 450, especially if you got a lot of stuff going in both directions. But again, pretty incredible interface for the cost of these devices. Well written software, and so far for months it's been working between the shack without fail, in the weather, in the rain, you name it, it just works. A little bit more about this software. There is a real-time waveform view spectrum analyzer. The waterfall there builds over time in the middle, and at the bottom there's an ambient noise level meter to let you see where the signals are, to help you see what's on the band around you. You might be able to pick bandwidths or channels that better suit your area. There's also an alignment tool that helps you get the beams pointed directly at each other at the highest signal level you can, depending on the distance and anything that might be in between. Of course, I'm running a very short distance in regards to their capacity, so you can see I have a negative 38 dBm signal here, but the alignment tool is built in as well. As long as you can get to the one you're local to, you'll be able to see what's on the other side. The particular model I picked up was in the is the Ubiquiti Power Beam AC model, PBE 5AC 300, which is very it's in my price range. I'm not going to say it's cheap old man compliant, but since we've varied from the subject, it's might be moving up in that range of costs. As you can see here by the specs, they claim that the throughput is a possible 550 plus megabits per second at a range of 20 plus kilometers. So I'm gonna start doing some practical testing to find out how accurate that is in my conditions. You can see here that I have my system currently set to the lowest possible transmission power on this device, which is that negative 4 dBm you see at the bottom, and that's auto negotiating a bandwidth of 80 megahertz and also the TX rate methods, which is, like I said earlier, achieving about 450 megs link between my shack and the home network on the other end. The LAN is gigabit, 1000 megabits per second, full duplex connections to the device itself, and again the power that feeds it is fed from an injector on the side where each point-to-point device is located. I am also running this as a bridge, layer 2, so basically everything that works on the network in its same IP range is being fed to this side, or the shack side, remote. There is also a built-in speed tool that you could use to further optimize or to see what you're actually getting compared to what the specs are. Once you got the link established and set up, it will communicate and log into the other end and perform its own lead speed test of the bridge itself across the devices. So there's a lot of very good tools in this to see and continuously monitor how the link is performing. And like I said, it's been outside for a month now, through all sorts of weathers and wind and you name it, and has survived so far without incident. It's also a very nice chart to show you the noise floor, which is the green at the bottom, versus the interference and noise, which is the line in the middle. Thank you, motorcycle. And also the signal, which is the blue line at the top. So again, very nice tools to use to really show you how it's doing. There's also a surveyor or site survey feature built in so that you can see what else is might be around your neighborhood or areas. Of course, that's not to be confused with the actual speed of your ISP, which is you know, differing depending on whatever service provider you're using. But this link is providing the absolute highest rating possible of my link that's feeding this my shack. So that's good to know, which is much lower than the actual link speed. At least I know I'm going to get everything that's available. Of course, there are several uses here in my shack for this internet connection that a lot of things depend on: remote connectivity and iGates and all the services that I run here in the shack. So very feature-rich program that feeds and does the job quite well. And for less than, well, for $200, I can't really beat that combination of the Ubiquiti's bridge here. So good stuff. I had absolutely no trouble with throughput or any other type of issues with it so far, and this is not the fastest computer in the world here in the shack, but excellent throughput on multiple services. And again, you know, you can actually see what's happening in pretty much real time with the device, and it's so far really good. So I'm really impressed with it and plan on using it to feed the shack here. So 73s, I hope you enjoy if you decide to go down these roads.
Yeah, I really want one of those, and I don't even have a use for it.
Well, don't get one of them. You got to get two of them.
Well, do they come as a pair, or do you have to buy them separately?
They sell them single, but most places bundle them in 2s, 4s, and 6s. Yeah. The reason I really bought them was to do a project for our local ham or amateur radio club here. We're going to feed the club internet connectivity or ISP connectivity from several points over 7 miles, 6 miles, and 5 miles. Plus, we'll kind of have a roving station that we can send out mobile and link back up to the club. So we're kind of trying a whole bunch of things on different fronts, and my test initially out of the box was to hook the shack up. Yeah,
I've really could use some of those at some of my transmitter sites between various locations so that I could get some internet out to them. But I don't know that, well, one of them I can't get a shot to. That's the reason I'm on a T1 now. So 5 gigahertz, I know I'm not going to have a chance if I couldn't make it with 900 megahertz.
No, 5 gigs is not tree friendly, right?
No. I did want to mention the place to get your wardrobe that none of us are wearing this week. You'll often see us wearing our AmateurLogic swag. AmateurLogic.Spreadshirt.com. You can find the t-shirts, polo shirts, caps, hoodies, sweatshirts. You can even find that infamous Ham College / Animal House sweatshirt on there, designed by our friend Mike, VE3MIC. But AmateurLogic.Spreadshirt.com. Go there, get you some AmateurLogic swag. Fly the colors at the next Ham Fest you go to.
Just on the subject of spreadshirts, George, John, I think it's John Amadeo at Last Man Standing was kind enough to send me a T-shirt. Unfortunately, it's a bit cold today for me, so I can't wear it. But I just want to say thanks to John and everybody at the crew there for the great T-shirt.
Yeah, the Last Man Standing shirts. Tommy and I got one of those too. Those are nice, and yeah, Last Man Standing. He's a ham in the show, and he has a ham shack, and you'll see some nice Icom gear and other gear in there as well. So
and also George, I can't help but mention that if you look very, very carefully on Tim's desk, Tim's actually got a ham radio desk there, you'll see a number of QSL cards of people that you may know. Yeah,
I think I've seen. Did I see yours on there?
Yeah, mine is on there, and I think yours is on there, and Tommy's, and quite a number of other, celebrities or people on other IPTV shows as well.
Yeah. That's cool. We like that show. I guess we probably need to call it quits, and we did manage to get through one without Tommy in the co-pilot seat over here.
Yeah, I'm sure the police will have extradited him back to Mississippi by next week, or next month, I should say.
Yeah, he should be back in time for the next show. And it was an interesting segment he had tonight, benchmarking those Raspberry Pis. And Emile, that was a great segment you had too there on the Ubiquiti stuff. I've had my eye on that.
All right, thanks, and we'll continue down that road to see really what's practical. The device says it's capable of 20 kilometers, and there's many bigger dishes and more powerful, versions of that. So we'll see what's really practical.
Yeah. Okay. Any final words before we go, Peter?
Oh, look, look, thanks to our chat room for hanging in there with us, and to all our viewers, and for staying and being loyal viewers. We're up to episode 89, so we're only probably another 11 episodes away from the big 100, which will be, I'm sure, will be an extra big bonus episode. And I'm looking forward to doing that in the next year or two.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't know if we had mentioned it by the on the last show, but we had just shot the IC7300 video here. Ray brought one in. The first one, or the only one I think, was in the United States at the time. They're out now, available for sale, and there's people talking about them over here in the chat room that are really enjoying them. But that video is out now. Go to the AmateurLogic YouTube channel and search for IC7300. You can find that there. Emile, any final words from you?
The final words I'm going to say, just because I love hearing Peter say it, is propensity.
Propensity.
Propensity, and also the other word would be articulation.
Articulation.
Excellent. That's my words.
There was another word too, Emile, and this is the one I will say, and it was what was it? Was it contribute? Was that it, Peter?
Contribute?
Yeah, it's contribute is what we call it, but I think you called it contribute.
Well, so I would say contribution, okay. Or contribute. I do sort of pronounce it two different ways. It's a bit like, so I'm just thinking there's a town out in rural Victoria that gets pronounced two different ways depending on how you like to pronounce it. So there are words like that can often be pronounced several different ways.
Oh well, yeah. Think nothing about it. Gordo calls Morse code Morris code.
Oh yeah. Now it comes to me, Castlemaine. Whether you pronounce it Castlemaine or Castlemaine.
We don't even know what that
tomato.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, 7-3. Thanks for joining us here. And
73's everybody.
73's everybody.
See you next month. The box. There's your 50 hertz, Peter.
George, your audio's just dropped back or out.
In reference to the Icom 7300, the new rig that you guys reviewed with Ray, I think, what was that, a week ago?
Yeah, this is not a picture of that at all, is it?
No, it sure isn't.
Okay. Well,